Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into how human history is way more crowded, complex, and honestly, far more fascinating than we ever imagined. We're going to completely reshape how you look at the history of our species, diving into some truly mind-bending fossil records and cutting-edge genetic data. So for 300,000 years, Homo sapiens have walked the Earth. But the truth is, for most of that time, we were sharing the planet with several other distinct human species at the exact same time. You know, we kind of have this habit of thinking of ourselves as the solitary main characters of the human story, but the Earth used to be a multi-species world, just absolutely teeming with different kinds of minds and bodies. Okay, let's dive into this by tossing out that outdated textbook myth right now. You know the one, that neat little evolutionary ladder? Yeah, scratch that. The reality is an incredibly tangled evolutionary thicket. Evolution wasn't just a single line of supposedly inferior species stepping aside for superior ones. No way. It was this chaotic, beautiful web of branches that grew side by side, competed, and, as we'll see pretty soon, even interbred.
All right, part one, the island effect.
To really grasp how bizarre this evolutionary thicket can get, we have to look at the geographical extremes, starting with remote islands. Take the Indonesian island of Flores. To get there, an ancient hominin species had to cross Wallacea, which is a deep water ocean divide. This wasn't some casual stroll over a land bridge. This required a lucky sweepstakes journey across open ocean. Once they washed ashore, they were completely geographically trapped for millennia. And that deep isolation triggered a wild phenomenon called insular dwarfism. Basically, it turns an island into a literal biological machine. When resources are super scarce, nature actively selects for smaller bodies. This process actually shrank not just the ancient humans living there, but their prey too. Meaning these folks were out there hunting literal, pocket-sized pygmy elephants. The ultimate result of this was Homo floresiensis. Just look at this. An adult female stood just over a meter tall, and she had a brain roughly the size of a chimpanzee's. But here is the absolute kicker. Despite that tiny brain, they were utilizing fire and crafting primitive stone tools to hunt those tiny elephants. It completely shatters the idea that brain size strictly limits complex behavior. And we see a strikingly similar mystery over in the Philippines with Homo luzonensis. This was a species that somehow miraculously crossed open water and incredibly retained curved tree-climbing toes for millions of years in the past. Found in Callao Cave and dating back 50 to 67,000 years, their anatomy is this impossible mosaic. Their bones are gesturing toward evolutionary histories millions of years apart, which proves for sure that these islands weren't just safe havens, they were evolutionary accelerators.
Moving right along to part two, rewriting the human timeline.
Picture this. It's 1933 in China, and an enormous fossil nicknamed Dragon Man, or Homo longi, is pulled from a riverbank. It had these bizarre square eye sockets and a massive brain. But to protect it from Japanese military occupation, a laborer wrapped it up and hid it at the bottom of a well for 85 years. The secret was passed down for 3 generations. When scientists finally got their hands on it, its massive brow ridges and flat cheekbones absolutely stunned the scientific community.
And it gets crazier. A recent digital reconstruction of a million-year-old skull called Yunxian 2 directly links it to Dragon Man. And this pushes the evolutionary split between modern humans and our closest relatives way, way back. We used to think that split happened around 400,000 years ago. Well, the latest data suggests it could actually be 1 million years ago, essentially doubling the timeline of our origins.
Meanwhile, down in South Africa, 1,550 bones from 27 individuals of a tiny-brained species called Homo naledi were found deep inside the Rising Star cave system. Just imagine. Actually, if you're claustrophobic, maybe don't imagine it. Navigating a perilous rock passage that narrows to less than 25 centimeters just to get in there. This intensely isolated layout has sparked fierce debate about whether this small-brained species was actually deliberately navigating a pitch-black maze to bury their dead. The plot definitely thickens in Spain, at a 13-meter-deep vertical shaft literally called the Pit of Bones. It contains 28 ancient individuals from 430,000 years ago, alongside a single deliberately placed pink hand axe nicknamed Excalibur, which strongly hints at some kind of ancient ritual. But the real shocker? Geneticists extracted DNA from these European remains and found it links them to a population 12,000 kilometers away in Siberia.
It proves archaic humans were exchanging genetics across staggering continental distances. Which brings us perfectly to part 3, ghosts in our DNA. This is honestly the most mind-blowing realization of this entire explainer. Researchers have found that up to 19% of the DNA in modern West African populations comes from an unknown ghost archaic species. Using statistical machine learning, scientists pinpointed DNA segments that simply do not match Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or any other known group. This ghost species has left 0 physical bones behind. They are completely vanished physically, but mathematically confirmed to be living right inside our genetic code. Similarly, we have the Denisovans. This was a vast, widespread species across Asia, and yet we know about them almost entirely from a single child's tiny pinky bone and a tooth found in a Siberian cave. Think about that for a second. We defined an entire sister group to the Neanderthals before we even had a single full bone of their skeleton. And they were highly interactive. Today, indigenous peoples of Melanesia carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA. This proves something totally crucial. When our modern ancestors migrated across the globe, they didn't just compete with these ancient cousins, they actively absorbed them. They met and they mixed. And in a stunning example of evolutionary teamwork, the Denisovans actually gifted modern Tibetans the EPS1 gene. See, the Denisovans spent 160,000 years adapting to the harsh, extreme altitude of the Tibetan plateau. When modern humans arrived and interbred with them, we effectively inherited that hard-earned genetic survival toolkit. We kept exactly what was useful, and that specific gene is actively helping people breathe at high altitudes without getting sick today. So on to part 4, the last one standing. With all these incredibly diverse human species sharing Middle Earth, how on earth did Homo sapiens end up alone? Well, for some perspective, we are actually total newcomers. We've only been around for 300,000 years. Homo erectus, they survived for a whopping 1.5 million years. That's 5 times as long as us. If you're measuring success purely by survival time, Homo erectus is hands down the most successful human species to ever exist. They conquered 3 continents and were doing remarkably well until a sudden climate shift. Their last known population was erased by what was likely a massive environmental flood at a riverbend in Java, Indonesia, just 110,000 years ago. After outlasting basically everyone else, their final curtain wasn't a slow, fading decline. It was a rapid, catastrophic event. And then, even as recently as 11,500 years ago, literally right when other human groups were starting to invent farming, you had this isolated group called the Red Deer Cave people hunting in Yunnan province, China. They carried modern Homo sapiens genomes, but they still wore the archaic flat faces and thick cranial walls of the deep past. It demands that we look at a much more complicated model of history, one where deeply isolated groups kept ancient physical features right up until the dawn of modern civilization. So you see, extinction is an incredibly blurry line. The disappearance of all these diverse species was never just a simple script of the inferior yielding to the superior. It was a highly complex dance of climate, geography, fierce competition, and just pure chance. When different human populations met, they didn't simply wipe each other out, they combined. We are a walking evolutionary mosaic. And this brilliantly highlights that our vanished cousins aren't entirely extinct. They are very much alive right now, anonymously running through the biology and immune systems of hundreds of millions of people. They're surviving in the immune markers of people in West Africa and pulsing in the blood of high-altitude climbers in Tibet. Which leaves us with one really profound thought to wrap up this explainer. If we are quite literally a living patchwork of vanished species, what does it actually mean to be human? We aren't the end of a single straight line. We're the sum total of an incredibly beautiful, complex, and wild evolutionary thicket. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with me today.